You joined us for Rain of Blood, and together we made it rain bigger and better than we could have ever imagined. So now, join us for a second blazing inferno of knowledge and exploration. You're listening to Rain of Fire, the scorching sequel event to Rain of Blood, where we're going to delve into the world of fireplay education and safety as we prepare for the upcoming Rain of Fire event. Join your host, Miss Kitten, Radically Dark, and Ember Solaris as we ignite your curiosity and stoke the flames of passion with discussions, interviews, and authentic insights from around the globe. Together, we're three flames united in one mission to make quality kink education more accessible and open pathways to conversation and connection about edgeplay topics around the world. But before we dive into these sizzling topics, a content warning. Rain of Fire discusses mature themes, explicit content, and practices related to BDSM and fireplay. So listener discretion is advised, and this is an adult-only podcast. Other topics may include mental health, trauma, consent, and more. So please be sure you're in a good spot to engage in these topics before continuing to listen. So, grab your fire gear, stoke the flames of curiosity, and let's embark on this crackling journey together. Welcome to Rain of Fire.
Hey, amazing firebugs. Welcome back to the Rain of Fire podcast. You're in the dungeon tonight with Miss Kitten and June X July. And tonight we're talking about microbranding. Really super excited to have this human chat to us. And welcome, June. And thank you so much for joining us for Rain of Fire and for bringing an amazing branding class to us. We're really excited to have you and really grateful for your time.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Just to get started so that the listeners have a bit of an idea, because I think our journeys are all so different, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you got started in kink and what your journey looked like.
I got started in kink with partners, just experimenting in the bedroom, so to speak. But I guess I got started, and I had been doing that for, pretty much my whole dating relationship experience in my life. I started doing kinky things when I was very young, but I didn't attribute it to being kink. So I don't really think to include it in kink, even though now I can look back in my life and say, okay, I can definitely see that I was kinking without realizing that I was kinking. But I don't necessarily include that in my kink journey because I wasn't consciously kinking. But I was doing things when I was a teenager, was definitely doing blood play as a teenager, was doing blood play in my my late teens with partners, friends, was doing body modification as a young teenager, as a teenager with friends. And that would have been in the late 80s and the early 90s in the punk rock scene, hardcore scene in Philadelphia. We were doing a lot of body modification. This was way before tattoo, at least was mainstream. Piercing, at least as it is now, didn't exist. That I had any introduction to. We were doing all of that ourselves. Artistic cutting, we were doing all of that stuff. So I didn't see it as kinking, and I didn't see it. I knew it was body modification in a sense, but not in the way that I do now. But I started in the public scene in, I think, 2017, 2018, here in Philadelphia. And I pretty much came out of the gate doing microbrands. I went to the Beltane, which is a kinky. It's a spiritual kink crossover camping experience that's very popular. And I took a class on microbranding, and I really haven't stopped. And I've been microbranding ever since. And I don't think that, well, there were some other people that had been doing it that kind of stepped off from doing it. And I just started doing it. And there were a lot of people that wanted me to brand them. So I just never really stopped. And then I went into presenting. I went into demoing. And all through that, I was experimenting. And I was really lucky to have people that were willing and trusted me to allow me to experiment with them, and was able to push what, at least the knowledge that I had access to, and it brought me to where I am today.
I love that. I love how I think all of us, especially in the shafts community, have a way of having been drawn to this at quite an early age. I think needles for me were very much part of my youth too, and I've never really thought about it. But hearing you, I resonate so much with hearing you talk, because I think I got my tongue pierced at 16 by a friend in a parking lot. So I think it definitely was part of my culture growing up too, and it's just been so much of who I am today. So it was really lovely to listen to you talk about your journey, and I really resonated with a lot of it. Before we carry on and get sort of into it, do you want to briefly tell me what microbranding means to you, and just what is it, so that we can give our listeners just an idea of what we're actually talking about?
Sure. Microbranding is, branding overall is burning something into the skin. Of course, this is my interpretation of it. And microbranding is just doing that on a small scale. A lot of people kind of make a big deal about separating microbranding from branding, but microbranding is branding. A lot of people, when they hear branding, they're thinking of like a cattle brand or a strike brand or some kind of large surface branding, or maybe like a fraternity brand, which is like a tapping brand, which is a larger surface. But a microbranding is a smaller surface, usually done one dot at a time. It's also called cell popping for that reason. And that's how I do it. I literally do it one very small dot at a time. This brings the pain level down to a manageable level, because it's less of a surface area that is being damaged at a time. So large surface area, large pain level, small surface area, a much more manageable pain level. And then if you're branding someone for a longer period of time, or micro-branding someone for a longer period of time, then that can become unmanageable for various reasons, which I can utilize that in a scene if I want to. But for the most part, it's a very tolerable amount of pain. If you can sit for a tattoo, generally you can sit for a microbrand. Some people get weirded out because it's a burn, so you can smell the flesh. You can see sometimes the the smoke coming out of the skin, and there's a fire. So some people are afraid of fire. And so that can limit their desire to want to have done. But generally, it's a much easier way to be branded than a larger cattle brand type brand, which probably isn't that pleasant. But it is still a brand as anything getting burned into the skin. And there's all different types of, I would probably even consider a larger tool, but with a larger surface area. It's still a microbrand depending on the size of the tool. So it's a variable.
I've once witnessed in my vanilla life a couple of farmers drink a whole bunch of whiskey on a Friday night at a local pub, and get really drunk enough to put the cattle brands into the fire on a cold winter's night, and then pull each other's shorts down and brand each other in the pub. So I've seen what a proper cattle brand does. It's not pretty. It doesn't look fun. It wasn't fun for them at all. The next morning at breakfast, they were all standing up. Nobody was sitting down in a chair. It was a night I'll probably never forget from a branding perspective. I've seen some of the pictures of the branding afterwards, but I've never seen anybody do it in person. It looks absolutely amazing. Is it something that you do with a pattern, like a tattoo, or is it something that you just do freehand?
I used to do it freehand because when I learned, I was told that you could use a stencil because there is a very small chance that the ink from the stencil could stay in the skin. So when I first started doing the brands, I did them all freehand. And I did that for quite a while. I would say maybe a year even. I did them all freehand, and I'll still occasionally do them freehand, but mostly now I draw out a design, I design it, I draw it out, and then I will transfer it via a stencil, and then I will brand it that way, so I can be very precise. I am a person that enjoys precision. So, and I'm an artist, so I really like being able to do the whole process from beginning to end. And I've been doing flash sheets there's a local event that has service topping stations where I've been doing branding. So I designed a flash sheet for that. I've been doing flash sheets, and I also do some custom designs for people. And so, yeah, I do it that way now, but it used to be all freehand.
I am the one person who managed to transfer ink from stabbing over ink with needles into my skin, and I managed to tattoo 3 vertical lines on my breast. So I've never done it again, and I've used tattoo as the same transfer process afterwards, but I am that person. So I will tell you from personal experience that I never thought it would happen until I did it to myself.
It can happen. I've never had it happen, but it can happen. But I also have a tattoo from a cheek spear, and that didn't even use a tattoo stencil. It's just, I guess, from, I don't know, but I have a little blue dot from where the cheek
I love that.
where the cheek spear went. So I'm like, I like that it's there, but it's the strangest thing. So, that's interesting to hear. That's so cool.
It's quite a giggle, and it's definitely something that I have to, if I'm swimming in a vanilla setting, I have to wear a closed bikini top because it's quite noticeable. And I'm always asked about,
wow.
Yeah, I'm always asked about what the lines are from and what the tattoo means, and I just have to smile, because they were self-inflicted, and as a needle top I should know better, and I've done a million of the same type type of thing before. Incredible, and I have huge respect. And they're one of my favorite plays. Face needles are just my best. So I absolutely love the picture of you with the cheek spears.
Oh, thank you. I've bottomed I think twice for a cheek spear. My one friend does them, and I love it. I really do. I would do that a million times.
I'm so with you. I meant to talk about fire on the podcast, but when I saw the photo with you, the cheek spears, I was like, that's just it's my bucket list play. It's so much fun. I wanted to ask you about the brands. How long do they last on the skin? And I know it's obviously person dependent and skin dependent, but what is an average brand's lifespan on average skin?
Given the best conditions, I would say a couple months, anywhere from 3 to 6 months. But I can kind of finagle that. I can do my best to make it a permanent brand, and I can do my best to make it a temporary brand. But I tell everyone that I brand to go into it with the assumption that it could always end up a permanent brand, because it could. It could heal. I've had people heal brands in a couple weeks. I have had people who had what I thought was a very, very shallow going to heal in a couple months brand end up with a brand that healed, but they had the melanin in their skin disrupted. So it was like the melanin was gone. So the brand was not there anymore, but the melanin was gone. So it was almost like the brand was still there. I have had so many variables of different things. It also depends where it is on the body. The thinner the skin, obviously, the more likely the brand is going to be permanent. The thicker the skin, the more likely it won't. If it's on like an ass or something like that, and someone's sitting on it, it's going to be less likely to be permanent. If it's like on your hands that you're washing all the time, it's more likely to be permanent because the scab is going to get wet. If the scab gets wet, or if the scab, I call it melts, that's definitely not the technical term, then the scab will be permanent, or the brand will be permanent. If anything disrupts the scab, that is really what determines how long the brand is going to stick around.
Oh, wow. And I have like a vague recollection of talking about branding when I got into my community right in the beginning of kink, which is probably a good 15 years ago. And the top that I was talking to said that you could then disrupt the healing process by almost rubbing the brand down. And I love how you put melting the scab. I think that's very descriptive, and it almost explains it perfectly. And I just remember thinking that, that was a cool idea. I think in my youth, I had some crazy assumptions about life. I'm not sure I'd treat it the same way now, but then I thought it was super cool that you could enhance the scarring by treating it differently in aftercare.
You definitely can. When I first started, a lot of people said if you rub ash into the scab, then it will heal. It will become permanent. I tried that and it didn't do anything. I've rubbed tattoo ink into the scab. That did nothing for me. But if I have covered it with a Band-Aid and the scab melted, and that definitely did something. I have, if you peel it off, if you peel the scab, that will definitely do something. But you also put yourself at risk for infection, and there's there's all caveats to that. But yeah, there's definitely things that you can do, but they also, they all have risks that you take with those. So I also include on my FetLife page, I put all the pictures that my bottoms will send me. I post with their consent, of course, so that there's a reference for other tops who are branding and for other bottoms that I've branded or who have been branded that can look at. Because when you have been branded, it's very easy to look at your brand and go, uh-oh, is this okay? So that they can use that as a reference and be like, okay, this person's looked like this. So, and it healed. Okay. So I'll be okay. And it's just also really interesting to me to see how the healing process goes. And I just also really like to stay in touch with the people that I've branded. I like the process from the beginning of the what do you want, where do you want it, and the design, and then designing it, and then doing it, and the scene, and discussing it, and then keeping in touch afterwards with pictures and watching them heal. And I love the whole arc of the process. So that's interesting and fun for me. So I always have pictures so that people can reference that. So I have, it was actually the first brand, was the brand that I learned on. And my first brand was a brand that I covered and the scab melted. And it's definitely a permanent brand. I still have it. And it's in a very noticeable place, and people see it. And I think they assume that it was a self-harming mark, which is fine. They can assume whatever they want. But and I use it as a tool now when I'm teaching as my show and tell. This is what a brand looks like when the scab melts. And then I have brands that I did on myself that healed ideally, at least for my skin type. And then I can show them that as a thing. But yeah, so there's all different ways and times that brands can heal. It's really cool.
I love that. I love the skin as a canvas. It fascinates me. I love the healing process of it, and I love the journey that I, as a bottom, go through in healing. I've really found that quite empowering. It's really been beautiful. So even, just the way something develops, like an artistic cutting or a scarification, the whole process for me is such a beautiful journey. And I think it's really cool that as a top you stay involved in that, because I think there is a lot of gratitude to be received as the bottom goes through the journey. Well, there is for me anyway. And I really find it just absolutely phenomenal that the human body can take something and incorporate the art into the process of healing, and that the art changes. So the art has its own cycle of life a little bit, and I've just find that absolutely beautiful. So the skin as a canvas fascinates me, and I just have so much respect for it, and I just absolutely love the process.
Exactly. It's just so the transformation, and it's just a smaller version of the healing that we, like, as humans go through. And I love the transformation, and I love that exactly as you put it. You said it so well, that you can just view it and it's different at all times. And then even through I've had some of the brands that I've done on myself for years now, and I'm just watching them and how they're changing still even years and years later. And when I did this brand on myself, it meant this to me, and what is my relationship to that now? And, how have I grown from that
Love, love
space that
that.
I was in? And I do the stick and poke blood tattoos using blood as ink for the same reason. It's like this ephemeral thing. It's just really, I just love that idea of it. It's really neat.
I'm so glad you brought up bloodlining, because it's something that in my where I live is just really we don't have access to a lot of information of it on it, and I absolutely love hand poke tattoos. I think it's one of the most beautiful processes. And I follow like a million artists on Instagram. I'm a real fangirl, and we've recently started doing a little bit of the bloodlining with the hand poke. And it's just such a beautiful experience. We have like this little sewing circle of girls and we come together and we hand poke each other. But it's just so beautiful to see the body respond to that. And just the process of learning to hand poke was really beautiful, because it's actually not, it's not something you need to use an incredible amount of force with. It's actually something that, and it develops like from when you first do it to 3 hours or 4 hours later to 2 days later. It has like a whole cycle of its own. It absolutely fascinates me. It's something I've just started doing, and I'm so in love with the whole process. I think the whole idea of hand poke is just such a beautiful process.
I agree.
Yeah, and the bloodlining, we really battled. We wanted to get some bloodlining guys to come chat to us on Rain of Blood, and nobody was keen to stand up and talk about it. And I think it's such a gorgeous process. I know that there's some girls in my needle group who are fascinated by it as well, and I also think it's a nice way of trying something out and seeing if you like it, and then deciding if that's a good place to put it. So I think it has a lot of good qualities in it, but also that you can just create art and you can just gain some confidence before you put ink into it is also super.
Absolutely.
So why branding? What fascinated you about it? What captivated you? And I know the art side of it, but just the experience side, because it's quite a task, and to be a top for it is also quite a task. I mean, it's something that is quite hard work. It's quite intensive. Maybe you can share a little bit about why exactly branding captivates you so much.
I think I was captivated. I think it was a remnant from being a teenager in the punk rock and hardcore scene. It was kind of like, I don't know, just something we talked about, like, oh, wouldn't it be so cool if we like did this thing and we, branded ourselves. And I was just always kind of fascinated by it. And then I remember, I think on a fetish forum, probably at some point, learning about fakir, and just being like, I want to do that. But it's felt so unattainable. It felt so other. It felt very, too alternative to something that I could ever access. And I would, think about it from time to time and like just thought it was so cool. And then when I had a chance to take the class, I would hear, when I started getting into kink, I would hear about microbranding and I'd be like, ooh, that sounds really cool. Like that's something that I could do. And I'd hear people talk about it, but it also still felt like something like, where do you learn about that? Where does that happen? Where, and then I heard about the class and I literally couldn't go fast enough. And it was just like, I don't know, it's just the right place, right time kind of thing. It is, I came into it actually at a very kind of strange time in my local scene, where branding was kind of like no one really wanted to touch it. But I guess I was naive and didn't really know that it was a thing that people didn't really want to do or teach or even have at their events or not have at their events, but have presentations at their events. Locally, people are still reluctant, I think, to come around to it. But it's happening. It's happening. And I just feel that I have a solid sense of trust in my capabilities, and I know my limitations, and I'm not going to do anything that I feel is out of hand for me. And as long as I stay within that realm of capacity for myself, I feel pretty comfortable. I feel pretty grounded. And I operate from there pretty much in all ways in my life, or at least I try to. And so I try to top, especially from that place. And with branding, you have to, because you can end up really damaging somebody. Less so with how I do it. It is a very controllable medium in the way that I brand people. And that also makes me feel more comfortable. I would feel less comfortable if I were doing a strike branding, tapping. I've wanted to experiment on smaller scale with that kind of stuff. And I have on a very, very small scale. But I have been reluctant to go further just for that reason, because I don't want to feel out of control. And the thing with the strike brand is you are out of control, because the brand at that point is controlling how deep into the skin you go. It's not you. So that's out of my risk profile.
Yeah. I love that. I think you mentioned something there that really resonated with me about capacity, and I think it's a very unspoken about topic in kink, and I think that capacity, should be the deciding factor in how we kink and why we kink, and what we decide to do with our kink. Like, I really like capacity is one of the things that if I can impart anything to the people that I play with, it's to be realistic about capacity. And that, the capacity, I think when you're doing something like fire, I think capacity has, it's not just an emotional and a physical capacity that you need to check in with. There is also a financial capacity that comes into fire play. So I think for me, for fire as a kink, like the personal responsibility that comes with it, it just feels more overwhelming than other kinks do for me. I think it's the first time that I've looked at personal responsibility in its entirety, and even just and then put that into my risk budget or my risk person, decided how much I have to spend in the situation. I think because there is a bit more of a permanence to what can happen afterwards. So you really have to be sure that this is what you want. So having capacity before the play from a top side and a bottom side just becomes so important. I loved hearing you talk about that, because my community is not great with capacity. My community is, in it to win it every time. And they don't always think about the after effects. And I think with a kink like fire on any level, you've got to be deciding if you can spend what you're spending in the moment for the next 6 months or 8 months or whatever the healing process or time could pertain. Not so much with branding, but I mean, a fire play can go wrong so quickly that it could cost you a lot more in capacity than you are willing to spend at that moment, or that you even conceptualized.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I love your branding. I've had a really good stalk of your FetLife page. I encourage all the listeners to go and have a look, because I think you've really done some beautiful examples of how brands start off with an idea and how they end with the healing process. And I really think it's a great way to get used to the idea and to really understand what happens. So that was, I really appreciate you sharing that, and just your thoughts behind why you share that are so beautiful and really resonate with me too. And I've loved chatting to you, and I'm excited about your class. So,
thank you.
Tell us a little bit about what's going to happen, not too much. Are you going to brand somebody for us? Are we going to see you put a brand on somebody?
I am. I'm doing a microbranding 101 class, which covers the basics. And I will have a branding bottom. I'll have an assistant there who's also my spotter. And I will have an advanced microbranding class where I'll talk about some advanced techniques. And if you want to do a microbranding scene that you want to craft into an ordeal, because it's really a lot of fun and very easy to turn microbranding into an ordeal. If you want to do a larger brand, I've done ordeals with bigger brands. I've done whole back pieces, and that involves a lot of extra stuff that you have to watch out for in terms of your bottom safety and their health, and your health and your safety, and just the scene in general. And also I'll be touching on some negotiation aspects, because it is important to negotiate microbranding scenes very, very rigorously. And aftercare I'm not a medical professional, so I won't be giving medical advice, but just from a lay person who's experienced in watching burns heal, I can say some of the stuff that I've witnessed and seen, and stuff like that, and probably a lot of more stuff too.
Love that. We're really excited, and I'm really grateful for your time tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, June. And to all my listeners, if you haven't got a ticket, you're really missing out. If you need a scholarship for this event, please let us know. Reach out to us in our DMs, and we're happy to help you. And to everybody who's looking forward to the event, we have some classes that are going to run for ticket holders at the end of June, just to get you guys started, just to get you guys thinking about fire. We have consent coming up. We have a self-care class coming up. So if you have your ticket, you're welcome to join us for any of those. Those will all be recorded. Oh, no words tonight. And you'll be able to watch them again on the on-demand. Our on-demand will start on the 1st of July. You'll have access to our YouTube channel if you have a ticket, and you can watch all our 101 classes and get to know a bit about the basics of fire. And then leading up to our amazing con with our amazing presenters and all our artists who are coming to teach you a lot more about fire and some really cool things like branding. So get your tickets, get your life sorted. Please register on the Discord so that we can reach out to you, and it's easy for us to do. Or send us a copy of your ticket, and we'll connect you with our FetLife group so that we can just keep you up to date with all the links for these classes coming up. We are super excited. Stuff is really starting to heat up on our side, and we're getting ready to blow you away a little bit. And from my dungeon in Cape Town, lots of love and kitten kisses.